Dia Gwitter Majin agus Cape Media Fault Riv Cock and Chuck Gahala na Carrick Balya Clia agus our Fogar and Chuck our Majin in Boilam Fresh and Fault Riv Gactini Evelyn Erlina Overike on Europe and Ria Kentaha agus Tira Ochula Ella. Good morning and welcome everybody here this morning to Dublin City Hall and today's announcement. I would also like to welcome all those joining us online from the United States of America, Europe, United Kingdom and other countries. This press conference is being live streamed and being broadcast live. Any information being published during the conference will be available in both hard and electronic copy when the event is finished and will be available through the Garda press office. And all agencies here this morning involved are happy that any content being published from now on can be broadcast now and can be broadcast on social media. I would ask everybody in the room to make sure their mobile phones are on mute or silent. I'll give you a few seconds to work on that one. Agus anish Boalam Glaker, Commissioner Cúntan Garda Síochána, Ivail, Cuireacht Agraha, Agus from Cusack, Cuireadh Hurto, Caintúri, E and Yo. So now I would like to call on an Assistant Commissioner of Garda Síochána in charge of organised and serious crime, John O'Driscoll, to introduce this morning's speakers. Thank you.
Minister, Ambassadors Cronin and Ambassador Mulhall, and all of you, you're very welcome here this morning. Céad Míle Fáilte. And the theme of this event is cooperating at an international level in protecting communities from organised and serious crime. And those that are participating, the participating agencies, and you can see their logos here displayed behind me, are the US Department of State, the US Department of Treasury, represented by the Office of Foreign Asset Control, the US Drugs Enforcement Agency, US Customs Border Protection, and we have, from the UK, we have the National Crime Agency and Europol. And the first person who is going to speak this morning is Ambassador Claire Cronin, who is the Ambassador of the United States to Ireland and represents the Department of State. And she will give you the contribution on behalf of the Department of State. Contribution being the important word, as you will see in what she is about to deliver to this initiative. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Harris, for hosting this event today, and to Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll for organizing it. I'd also like to thank Ambassador Dan Mulhall, who has joined us here today. Thank you to all of the officials who have traveled from the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands to be here today. This event is a testament to the strong relationships between the United States, Ireland, the United Kingdom, and Europol. Thank you to Customs and Border Protection Deputy Commissioner Troy Miller, to Wendy Wilcock, DEA's Special Agent in charge of the Special Operations Division. Thanks to Gregory Gatyanis, the Associate Director for the Office of Global Targeting within the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assistant Control, and to Matt Horn, the Deputy Director of Investigations in the UK's National Crime Agency, and to Yari Lioku, the head of the European Serious Organized Crime Department in Europol. I am very pleased to be here today for this important announcement of a series of actions our countries and organizations are undertaking jointly to counter the Kinahan Transnational Criminal Organization, also known as the KTCO. The KTCO has been accused of a wide range of heinous crimes all around the world, including murder and trafficking in firearms and narcotics. Countering transnational organized crime is an urgent priority for President Biden and the U.S. government. Transnational organized crime is a multi-billion-dollar business that transcends geographical boundaries and threatens global stability and democracies. Every year, millions of lives are affected by transnational organizations, including through drugs, violence, firearm deaths, and human trafficking and smuggling. And so today, the United States Department of State is pleased to announce a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to the financial disruption of the KTCO or the arrest and convictions of its leaders, Christopher Vincent Kinahan, Daniel Joseph Kinahan, and Christopher Kinahan, Jr. This reward is offered under the Department of State's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program. This program and its sister Narcotics Reward Program have helped to bring more than 75 transnational criminals and major narcotics traffickers to justice since 1986. So far, the State Department has paid over $135 million in rewards through these programs. You will hear from others about further actions our organizations are undertaking to stop this dangerous group. Together, organizations have engaged in intense and lengthy international cooperation to get to this point. We want to send a clear message to transnational organized crime groups that the United States will continue to work with its partners and make every effort to disrupt their operations and bring their leaders to justice, no matter where they are. The U.S. and its partners will continue to work to protect the American people and other free societies around the world by detecting, disrupting, and reducing the power of these transnational organizations. I will now pass the stage to Assistant Deputy Commissioner John O'Driscoll. Again, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And before we move on to our other speakers from the US, the Commissioner, Drew Harris, will say a few words to you.
Minister, Ambassadors, Garda and international colleagues, on behalf of Garda Síochána, Ireland's National Police and Security Service, I want to thank you for joining us here in Dublin today. Today is a landmark day in the fight against organised crime and in particular against the Kinahan organised crime gang. What you've heard already and what you will hear today is the culmination of years of hard work and dedication, resulting in a series of very significant enforcement measures that will deal a heavy blow, if not a crippling blow, to the Kinahan organised crime gang. It is a demonstration of the strength of resolve amongst all of us to put an end to a gang that has caused so much destruction and death here and abroad. This organised crime gang started life as a South inner city Dublin drug dealers, but has grown over the decades to become a transnational crime cartel involved in a wide range of criminality that is estimated to have generated over €1 billion for them. All of it leaving countless victims of violence and addiction across the world in their wake. And since the violent and tragic events of the Regency Hotel in 2016, and Garda Síochána has made it a priority to systematically degrade and dismantle this gang. We have arrested many of their key figures, leading to their prosecution and imprisonment. But we've also known for a long time that the Kinahan crime gang does not just operate here in Ireland, but that it has spread its criminality across the world. And we also are aware that Garda Síochána could not alone dismantle this group. On being appointed Garda Commissioner in 2018, one of the first briefings I received related to this particular crime gang. Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll briefed me on a plan he was advancing with major law enforcement agencies in the US, UK and Europe to not only tackle this organised crime gang here in Ireland, but also in some of their key areas of operation internationally, all with a particular emphasis on cutting off their revenue streams. And this initiative being launched today reflects the outcome of much discussion and action by the stakeholders present on how best to tackle organised crime groups with a global reach, such as the Kinahans. And today we see this internationally coordinated plan come to fruition. I want to sincerely thank all of our partners here today for their commitment and dedication. They've all shown huge determination in our joint fight against the Kinahans. And my sincere thanks to each of you and your teams for this incredibly important work. It should also be said that this is only the first phase of this initiative. Other law enforcement agencies in Northern Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands and Australia have already greatly assisted us in our work in tackling the Kinahan crime gang and will undoubtedly participate in the next phases as they unfold. And while most of the Kinahan leadership is now behind bars, it is true that some of the apex of the organisation is located in jurisdictions without extradition treaties to this country. To them, I would say, you can run, but you can't hide from justice forever. And from today, they will be running low on money, friends, and influence. I'm confident, particularly with the strength of purpose demonstrated by all of the partners here today, that those senior members of the Kinahan gang will be brought to justice sooner rather than later. And that will be a good day for the citizens of this country and a good day for very many others throughout the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we'll now display our name for our next speaker, who will be representing the US, representing the Customs Protection Service. And Troy Miller is going to speak on behalf of that service. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here today to represent U.S. Customs and Border Protection at this important announcement and to stand beside our partners in our shared commitment to bring criminal actors to justice. On behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, I would like to thank Commissioner Harris and then Garda Síochána, the United Kingdom's National Crime Agency, Ambassador Cronin, and our colleagues at the U.S. Department of State and the Office of Foreign Assets Control in the U.S. Department of Treasury, our partners at the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, and the team of international investigators, analysts, and other law enforcement personnel who facilitated the global success that is being presented today. Your partnership and commitment to working together is the reason we can make this designation today and announce the reward for justice. It is our job at CBP to protect the American public and our allies from terrorists and criminal groups that seek to exploit trade and travel to do harm to others. If we have learned anything as an agency over the past 20 years, it is that we can only achieve success at this endeavor when we work together across the U.S. government and with our international colleagues to protect the public from illicit activity. Long gone are the days where we only communicated internally, targeting one bad actor at a time. When we partner with international partners and other government agencies like DEA, Treasury, and State Department, the U.S. government can enhance the knowledge of the entire networks, how they operate, move throughout the world, pay for things, and communicate with each other. We can then use this information to holistically target criminal networks and restrict their ability to commit crimes and harm the public. We have worked tirelessly at CBP to build an infrastructure that prioritizes information sharing, cooperation, and leveraging joint operations across the U.S. government to target bad actors and criminal organizations. CBP is a world leader in using travel data and cargo data where our legal authorities allow to assist both domestic and international law enforcement. Today's announcement is the result of 3 years of extensive interagency and international work. I'm proud to be here today to make clear to the world our shared goals and values, that drug trafficking, money laundering, fraud, murder, and extortion have no place in our countries. We will use every authority at our disposal to curtail these threats and prevent them. And we will continue to work with our Irish and UK colleagues to bring bad actors to justice and keep the global public safe from these criminals. In this light, I want it to be known that foreign national members of this organization are not welcome in the United States. CBP will identify and deny access to those individuals who seek to travel. We should be proud of the work done to get to this point, while remaining steadfast and vigilant for the work still to come. Today's announcement is a shining example of our mutual commitment to collaboration and demonstrates that the world becomes a safer place when we work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. And our next speaker will speak on behalf of the Office of Foreign Asset Control of the U.S. Department of Treasury. And our speaker is Gregory Gajan's Associate Director, Office of Global Targeting. Gregory.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the U.S. Department of the Treasury, it is an honor to be here in Dublin this morning and to stand with all of these law enforcement professionals on this very special occasion. Let me begin by thanking you, Commissioner Harris, and the Garda Síochána for the work and dedication that brought all of us here today. Thank you, Ambassador Cronin, and for our longtime partner, the National Crime Agency and Europol. Financial sanctions have been in the news quite a bit lately, and for good reason. The United States sanctions are presidential authorities that are delegated to the Treasury Department and are among the most powerful and strategic tools used to protect national and international security. They are reserved for the enemies and adversaries that pose an extraordinary threat to the foreign policy, national security, and economy of the United States and to those of our partners and allies around the world. The U.S. Department of the Treasury believes in the warranted, strategic, and judicious use of sanctions. Warranted, that there is an ongoing threat or an imminent crisis that warrants this powerful tool. Strategic, that sanctions have a clear and intended and achievable goal. Judicious, that they are to protect the integrity of sanctions, that they are to prevent the harm to innocents, and that sanctions are reversible, and that we swiftly delist sanctions from people when the legal basis no longer applies. So indeed, sanctions are strong, but they are strongest when carried out with allies. For years, Treasury and OFAC have partnered with many countries to combat a wide array of global threats, from weapons of mass destruction to terrorism to corruption to Iran to North Korea, and everything in between that threatens the populations. But of all of these threats, none have a more devastating effect on the daily lives and the communities of everyday citizens than transnational organized crime. I'm proud that Treasury has forged a new partnership and an enduring partnership with the Garda Síochána to combat one of this country's most violent transnational criminal organizations. The Kinahan criminal organization got its start right here in the streets of Dublin in the late 90s, and over 2 decades evolved into a global criminal enterprise with tentacles stretching around the world into multiple countries and engaged in drug trafficking, firearms trafficking, and even murder. Since 2016, the Kinahan organization has waged a bloody war with another criminal gang in Ireland and Spain and has left many dead, including innocent bystanders, and terrorized civilian populations along the way. Now based in the United Arab Emirates, the Kinahan organization continues to operate in Ireland, the the UK, and Spain. So as of today, Treasury has imposed sanctions on 7 of its leaders and 3 companies related to it. First off, we're designating the Kinahan Transnational Criminal Organization itself. Christopher Kinahan Sr., the founder and leader of the organization. Daniel and Christopher Kinahan Jr., the sons of the founding leader who oversee the organization's drug trafficking activities, including the supply of illicit drugs into Ireland and the UK. Ian Thomas Dixon, currently based in Dubai, has overseen drug-related payments to the organization and the facilitation of bulk currency within Ireland and the UK. Sean Gerhard McGovern, also based in Dubai, and is believed to be a close advisor to Daniel Kinahan on all criminal activities and manages its communications. Bernard Patrick Clancy, based in Dubai, and is a key organization member who distributes wages and payments for the organization. John Francis Morisse is based in Spain. He is involved in money laundering and has served as the organization's enforcer and facilitator of illicit drug shipments from South America. The 3 companies the U.S. Treasury has sanctioned today are Nero Drinks Company Limited, is owned and controlled by John Morrissey, whose wife is the company's primary stockholder. Morrissey gave a significant portion of this business to Daniel Kinahan to compensate for illicit drug shipments. Hupo Sports LLC is owned or controlled by Ian Dixon and is a 49% shareholder, and it receives 80% of the payment's profits and holds executive power over the entire company. And Dushao General Trading LLC is owned and controlled by Daniel Kinahan. So as of today, the Kinahan Transnational Criminal Organization joins the ranks of Italy's Camorra, Mexico's Los Zetas, Japan's Yakuza, and Russia's thieves-in-law. Also as of today, as a result of these sanctions, these individuals are immediately severed from the U.S. financial system, and any assets or property under U.S. jurisdiction are immediately blocked at this moment. I want to thank Commissioner Harris, an assistant, and the men and women of the Garda Síochána for the work they have done in this organization to protect the men and women around the world, but especially here in Ireland. But above all, I do want to recognize Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll for being the driving force behind this investigation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gajans, for your contribution and the contribution of OFAC to this important initiative. The next speaker from the United States is Wendy Woolcock, who is a special agent in charge of the Special Operations Division of the Drugs Enforcement Administration. Please, Wendy.
Good morning, and thank you, Assistant Commissioner O'Driscoll, for that kind introduction. As the Special Agent in charge of the Special Operations Division for the Drug Enforcement Administration, I have the honor and privilege of representing the men and women of the DEA today. I would like to begin today by first thanking Commissioner Harris and Ambassador Cronin for the invitation to represent DEA alongside this elite, dedicated group of public servants and international law enforcement partners. I stand before you as a member of the international law enforcement community, pledging our continued commitment to relentlessly pursue, investigate, and bring to justice members of the Kinahan Organized Crime Group, specifically Christopher Vincent, Daniel, and Christopher Jr., all of whom have been added to the Department of State's reward program and designated by our partners from the Office of Foreign Asset Control. This joint designation amplifies the strength of a unified international law enforcement effort to hold the Kinahans and their affiliates responsible for the harm they have caused the people of Ireland, the United Kingdom, the United States, and others globally. The Kinahans' desire to self-promote and gain wealth, notoriety, and power is the driving force behind their illicit activities, to include drug trafficking and money laundering. For years, they have used intimidation, influence, and money to destroy towns by pouring drugs into the impoverished streets. They prey and profit from the addicted while living lavish lifestyles in Dubai. Transnational criminal organizations such as the Kinahans transcend international boundaries to generate revenue and elude law enforcement authorities. Additionally, they rely on their extensive criminal networks to conceal and conduct criminal activities. Simply stated, they work together against law enforcement. However, the bond of the badge is strong, and the oath of the office is sincere. And today you are witnessing a group of international law enforcement partners working collaboratively to leverage international laws, sanctions, and expertise for the sole purpose to uphold the oath of office and their duty to protect and serve. We will continue to work diligently with strength and compassion for the people we vow to protect, our country, our people, and most importantly, our children. In closing, I respectfully request that you submit any information you have which may lead to the financial disruption and/or arrest of the criminal Kinahan organization to kinahan@tcotips@dea.gov. I can promise you that the dedicated law enforcement and intelligence analysts present today will all work aggressively and tirelessly to follow up on every lead submitted to bring the Kinahan organized crime group to justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilcock, for that contribution, and indeed the ongoing contribution of the Drugs Enforcement Administration, who work very closely with us in dealing with crime of the nature concerned. We now move across the globe back to Europe, and our next speaker is Matt Horn, the Deputy Director of Investigations at the UK's National Crime Agency.
Good morning. Thank you to our hosts, and thank you to all of the partners present here today. I'm Matt Horn, and I'm a Deputy Director of Investigations in the National Crime Agency. The National Crime Agency targets criminals operating at the high end of high harm. Those who are the most violent, seek to cause the most harm to the UK, those who exploit the vulnerable, dominate communities, and undermine our economy. Members of the Kinahan organised crime group fall into all of those categories. The NCA and our partners have pursued the Kinahans and their criminal associates across the world over many years. We have carried out operations against the Kinahans themselves, which resulted in the seizure of a London property and a Bentley in 2011, belonging to Christopher Kinahan Sr., using civil recovery powers. We have targeted their most trusted associates, including the head of their UK network, Thomas Kavanagh, and also James Mulvey. The Kinahan organised crime group have transcended international boundaries, distributing multi-million-pound shipments of cocaine and heroin throughout Ireland, the UK, and mainland Europe. They have also been engaged in firearms trafficking and money laundering. It's estimated their illicit empire is worth over £1 billion. The National Crime Agency and our partners have seized dozens of firearms, including machine guns and automatic rifles, we have utilised our international network of officers to target this group and have shared intelligence with our overseas partners that has disrupted the group's activities. Our officers and our partners have prevented 8 threats to life. That's murders and serious violence on the streets of the UK and elsewhere by sharing intelligence with our trusted law enforcement partners. However, we know the group is responsible for more than a dozen murders and many more attempted in Ireland, Spain and Turkey. NCA operations, which led to the recent conviction and imprisonment of Thomas Kavanagh and his associates, as well as James Mulvey in 2018, have dealt significant blows to this crime group. However, despite our collective successes over the years, the Kinahans have managed to evade capture by going to extreme lengths to ensure that they are far enough removed from the criminal activities. They use trusted associates to run the day-to-day operation, and they enhance this position through their use of violence, intimidation and threats. The crime group have the wealth and resources to frustrate law enforcement efforts using corruption, and they have received training in anti-surveillance and intelligence techniques. This has enhanced their ability to stay under the radar. They've also sought to locate themselves outside of Ireland and the UK to frustrate our efforts. Together, we had to find a different approach, and therefore, working with our partners, National Crime Agency investigators, were part of meetings with the Office of Foreign Asset Control, housed within the US Department of Treasury, and representatives from the US Drugs Enforcement Administration to discuss taking on this crime group as a designation target. The collaborative international effort included in particular key partners and Garda Síochána, as well as European law enforcement partners and all the partners from the US today, to ensure a coordinated international effort. Since that time, the National Crime Agency, working with all of our partners here, have submitted material to OFAC and US law enforcement bodies. This highlights the serious and organised criminality the crime group is involved in and linked to. As a result of the sanctions imposed today, which have cut them off from the global financial system, this will be a huge blow to the Kinahans. Their bank accounts have been frozen and funds within them inaccessible. This group thought they were untouchable, but this shows that we will explore every opportunity available to disrupt their criminal activities, and we will not stop here. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We will ensure that those responsible for flooding our streets with drugs and firearms, laundering the proceeds of crime, inflicting violence, and being involved in murder are held to account for their actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your contribution and indeed the ongoing working relationship between the Garda Síochána and the UK's National Crime Agency. Our next speaker is Yari Luku, Head of Department at European Serious and Organised Crime Centre in Europol. Yari.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to thank the Irish, US and UK authorities for the excellent cooperation in this important investigation. Europol's key task is to provide operational support for the Member States and other operational partners authorities when conducting investigations on serious and organised crime, including also terrorism. We provide technical, tactical and financial support for the investigations, and these services were also made available for this investigation. One of our key functions is to act as an EU intelligence hub, meaning that we need to ensure that the Member States and other operational partners can exchange on a real-time basis operational and personal data to be used for the investigations. This is one of the key functions for Europol. And of course, at the moment we can see that the amount of information in Europol analysis systems is increasing. Last year we got 22% more information than during the previous year on serious and organized crime. This is of course improving that the organized crime in the EU is increasing, but it is also proving that the cooperation need among the law enforcement authorities is increasing, because organized crime is becoming increasingly international. What we know about high-risk organized crime in the EU from Europol's perspective, as has been mentioned already by various speakers, organized crime in the EU is increasing, and it poses a high and diverse, most diverse risk for the EU's internal security. It is affecting and undermining all levels of societies. This development is specifically accelerated because of the increasing profits of organized crime. We have estimated in Europol that the minimum annual value of proceeds of crime in the EU is approximately 110 billion euros, and only less than 2% of the proceeds of crime are confiscated. Therefore, the actions that are today published by the US and Irish authorities are extremely important when fighting organized crime. The best overview of the EU organized crime can be seen by assessing Europol's threat assessment on serious and organized crime 2021, and also the outcomes of the investigations that we are currently supporting. Last year we supported more than 2,300 investigations on cross-border high-risk crime. And based on these investigations and threat assessment, we can see that there are certain key features that are common to the high-risk organized crime. Firstly, they are mainly dealing with drugs trafficking activities. We see that approximately 48% of the organized crime groups are dealing with drugs trafficking. On the other hand, we see that violence and corruption are increasing. Both crimes are increasing approximately 60%. Organized crime groups are involved in these activities, and we estimate that 60% of the organized crime groups are involved in corruption and violence, and are using these instruments to facilitate their criminal activities. On the other hand, we see that approximately 80% of the organized crime groups are using legal or misusing legal structures to facilitate their criminal activities. And finally, we can see that the new technology and also the international networks are more and more exploited by the organized crime. What are the requirements for today's investigations on global organized crime from our perspective? Europol has provided operational support to authorities of Ireland and a number of other countries in investigations in Kinahan clan to ensure that the operational objectives are met. These investigations and other similar investigations on high-risk organized crime prove that the authorities have to ensure real-time information exchange and operational cooperation. We need to have a joint processing of real-time large data sets on a common platform, and Europol is providing this service for the EU member states. We need to make available artificial intelligence, including machine learning tools, for the processing of large and diverse data sets. And we need to also use international operational task forces operating according to a common operational plan. Otherwise, it's impossible for the law enforcement authorities to make an impact on the organized crime. Finally, Europol would like to thank once again the Irish, US and UK authorities for the excellent cooperation and ensure that we are available to provide support for the follow-up activities in this important investigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ari, and thank you for the ongoing support from Europol, which will be very important as we further our actions into the future in relation to the Kinahan organised crime group. It now falls on me to say a few words in relation to operational activity engaged in by the Garda Síochána in relation to the Kinahan organised crime group, which has its origins in south inner city of Dublin. Consequently, those that are considered to have established the OCG and others believed included in its membership have been the focus of attention of the Garda Síochána over many years. However, while the Kinahan OCG remained based in Dublin in earlier years, its leadership is believed to have since moved to the UAE after a period in which they were located in Spain. Since leaving Ireland, it is believed they have expanded to the extent that the OCG operates at a global level and has accumulated wealth that may well exceed 1 billion. Criminal organisations of such size frequently display a level of power derived from their wealth, which renders them aspects of their criminal activity potentially outside the reach of any one law enforcement entity or indeed any one nation. It is accepted at an international level to tackle in a meaningful way criminality associated with organised crime groups of this nature requires cooperation involving participation by law enforcement entities of a number of jurisdictions, which has resulted in this event here today. The reaction of the Kinahan organised crime group to the murder of a person associated with the group in a hotel in Dublin in February 2016 represented a defining time from the perspective of how the Garda Síochána would tackle criminality associated with the organised crime group. The extent to which the OCG had developed from being a group of criminals located and engaged in crime in Dublin to being a transnational organised crime group possessed of significant wealth and the power that is derived from that wealth became evident. This power was exercised through a campaign of murder in Ireland and elsewhere, directed by the hierarchy of the group, who are believed to have taken up residence at locations far removed, not alone from Ireland, but also Europe. Those within the Garda Síochána tasked with tackling organised and serious crime in Ireland reacted by concluding it would be insufficient to merely react to each incident of criminality associated with the organised crime group as it would occur. A decision was made to set a target of totally dismantling the organised crime group, which it was accepted would require particular focus on those at the apex of its hierarchical management structure. Success, it was considered, would require seizing the product in which the Kinahan organised crime group trade, the firearms to which they have access and use to murder and inflict harm, and cash and other commodities that represent the proceeds of their criminal activity. The identification in 2017 of a warehouse in Greenogue Business Park, Dublin, which appeared to be a legitimate transport business, but in fact was used to hold an arsenal of weapons for use at short notice by the Kinahan organised crime group, represented an important achievement for the Garda Síochána. The Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Group, assisted by our emergency response unit, entered that premises on the 24th of January of that year and found 17 firearms, including pistols, revolvers, a submachine gun and an AK-47 style assault rifle. A number of the handguns were primed, armed and ready for use. The search also located silencers, tracking devices and more than 4,000 rounds of ammunition, with additional ammunition found in a secret compartment in a van parked nearby. Those arrested, charged and convicted received sentences of up to 10 years. While sentencing those convicted, Mr. Justice Hunt said that the weapons represented enormous potential for death and destruction, and that it was a lethal arsenal stored for the purpose of organised and very serious organised crime. The Garda Síochána, through the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, supported by the Garda National Crime and Security Intelligence Service, placed a particular focus on intervening in threat-to-life incidents organised by the hierarchy of the Kinahan organised crime group, intended to result in murder of those that were considered to represent a threat to the group. This task set was not only to locate the firearms that would be used, but also to identify those tasked with using the firearms to kill and to gather sufficient evidence to achieve convictions arising from the criminality involved. On a total of 46 occasions, the Garda Síochána intervened in threat-to-life incidents believed organised by the Kinahan organised crime group, preventing almost certain murder in many cases. Intended hit teams were identified, placed under surveillance and apprehended in circumstances where intention to murder could be proved to the satisfaction of the criminal courts. A total of 22 persons have been convicted arising from intervention in these threat-to-life incidents. 2 attempts to murder one particular intended victim were identified and resulted in the conviction of 7 people. 9 people received sentences of 12 years or more, with 1 person sentenced to a term of 20 years. A Taurus 99mm pistol was seized in the course of an intervention relating to a particular attempt to murder, while firearms including a Marikov pistol, Beretta handgun and a Smith & Wesson revolver were seized in the course of another such intervention. A total of 13 people were convicted arising from particular firearms-related offences. Unfortunately, a number of murders believed linked to the Kinahan organised crime group occurred in the 3 years immediately following the incident at the Regency Hotel. However, investigation units within the Garda Síochána located within the Dublin metropolitan region identified a total of 12 suspects who were arrested, charged and subsequently convicted of criminal offences. A total of 7 received a sentence of life imprisonment, having been charged with murder. One particular murder associated with the Kinahan organised crime group occurred in Spain in 2015. The murder was investigated by law enforcement authorities in Spain, who were provided with significant assistance by the Garda Síochána. The Spanish investigation resulted in the arresting and charging of a person who was subsequently convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years, while he received an additional 2 years for illegal weapons possession. Controlled drugs with an estimated street value of almost 20 million linked to the Kinahan organised crime group have been seized in the course of investigations undertaken by the Garda Síochána through the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, in many cases in conjunction with our Revenue Commissioner's Customs Service. The investigations have given rise to the charging of a total of 17 people who were subsequently convicted in respect of drug-related offences. Targeting wealth amassed by the Kinahan organised crime group has resulted in seizures of numerous quantities of cash by the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau, totaling 7.5 million. Associated investigations have resulted in the conviction of 17 people arising from money laundering-related criminal charges. The Criminal Assets Bureau is another important element of the armoury of the Irish state in tackling criminal activity, in particular serious and organised criminal activity. The CAB seeks to deny and deprive criminals of assets acquired through criminal conduct. Last week in the High Court in Dublin, the Criminal Assets Bureau seized what is described as a luxury gated home situated in County Dublin, which the court was informed was under the control of the Kinahan organised crime group. In the course of court proceedings, the Criminal Assets Bureau offered evidence of financial transactions to the extent of 4.5 million involving members of that organised crime group. The case stands adjourned to next month so that the court can receive an update on intended service orders on both Daniel Kinahan and Thomas Kavanagh, identified to the court as fulfilling a management role within the organised crime group. The Garda Síochána, through the Garda National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, is undertaking investigations related to suspected use by members of the Kinahan organised crime group of fraudulently obtained genuine passports. Criminal proceedings have commenced arising from the obtaining and use of particular passports, and those cases are progressing through the courts. The Garda Síochána continues to progress a number of investigations relating to criminal offences believed associated with the Kinahan organised crime group, and looks forward to working with the law enforcement authorities in other jurisdictions, including the US, the UK, and with Europol, in gathering all available evidence required to ensure commencement of criminal proceedings. One such investigation recently gave rise to the Director who has knowledge of the current whereabouts of Sean McGovern, who is subject of a European arrest warrant. We would request him to contact the Garda Síochána. The offences in respect of which the European arrest warrant has issued include murder and a number of organised crime-related offences. In recent days, the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Group has undertaken a number of searches targeting persons suspected to be associated with this organised crime group, who it is believed are engaged in drug trafficking, money laundering and related criminal activity. This particular phase of investigation arose as a consequence of 3 particular premises being identified as associated with the organised crime group. Searches were undertaken over the past few days and a number of mobile communication devices, quantity of cash, relevant documentation, and 4 vehicles were seized. Today, however, we place particular focus on the Garda Síochána's liaison with law enforcement and other entities from elsewhere on the globe with whom we have forged a powerful working relationship and a common interest in dismantling the Kinahan organised crime group. Today also we focus on a process of dismantling. However, as is often the case when engaged in demolition, the intention is to build something better that will exist into the future. The ambition is through dismantling the evil edifice of crime within communities across the globe, including in Dublin, we will contribute to rebuilding the communities as places that will be less likely to experience the tragic consequences of organised crime groups. I suppose in conclusion, I'd just like to say it was perhaps at one time viewed as overly ambitious plan to achieve a gathering such as this with contributions to the task in hand of the nature that have been described. We in the Garda Síochána are very grateful to all who have engaged in this joint venture. A number of years ago, in the political world, the phrase Berlin or Boston was coined around a debate about where business is done. In our case, it has been a case not so much of Washington or The Hague, but rather Washington and The Hague. In a career of over 40 years in law enforcement, I have witnessed numerous examples of exceptional policing and law enforcement. However, in the course of this venture and the contributions of so many people involved has exceeded my expectations. With each of the entities present here today, I've witnessed, or in each of the entities present here today, I've witnessed the most exceptional levels of professionalism, hard work and dedication to purpose. And to all of those who opened doors to us, including on Pennsylvania Avenue, we welcome you all here and thank you for that welcome that you gave to us, and a very big thank you for your contributions here today, but particularly to the personnel, teams of personnel within each of the entities represented here today, who are the engine that produced the material that has allowed for the initiatives that we have spoken about to take place. We say thank you very much. And indeed to the personnel within the Garda Síochána and the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau in particular, headed by Detective Chief Superintendent Seamus Boland and earlier by Detective Chief Superintendent Angela Willis, along with Detective Superintendent David Gallagher. Your contribution and your team's contribution is thoroughly exceptional. We are very grateful. I would also like to say thank you very much to Ambassador Mulhall, who on our visits to Washington was so gracious in assisting us in many ways, a person who I met many years ago when dealing with the consequences of the East Asia tsunami when he was the ambassador in Kuala Lumpur and I was heading the recovery team that was sent by the Garda Síochána. Thank you very much for your assistance. Thank you very much to the Commissioner for his support and to Deputy Commissioner Anne-Marie McMahon, and not just for having faith that this initiative could be brought to the stage it is brought to today, but also by extending our international liaison team, delivering people to Washington and elsewhere who have proved invaluable also in bringing this initiative to this position today. And thank you all for being here and listening to us, and I hope it puts faith in all concerned of the power of this group who are tasked with tackling an organised crime group. Again, thank you very much, and I hand over to Liam here.
Gaurav Malga, Commissioner Kunta, thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner. Anish tugamid shug Garad kun sus Garad biog kun ligon de quid dornina or took a queer dove mocked agazanshin lanat meach session kesnagas fragra. We will take a very short break now. I would ask you to stay in your seats to allow some of our invited guests to leave and to reset up. We will then facilitate a question and answer session with Commissioner of Garda Síochána, Mr. Drew Harris, Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll, and Matt Horn, NCA Deputy Director of Operations. So if you give us just 1 minute to 2 minutes to just reset, and we'll come back for a question and answer session. For those persons online, we will try and facilitate some questions from online. So if you want to submit questions now, we will try and facilitate that as well. Thank you. everybody to retake their seats, please. We get on with the question and answer session. Paul Reynolds, RTE.
Commissioner or the Assistant Commissioner can take either or both. The first one is that Daniel Kinahan consistently says that he is an innocent man, that he has no convictions, and he has been maligned and targeted by the Irish authorities. So what do you say to Daniel Kinahan's convention and his claims that he is an innocent man with no convictions? And secondly, I mean, this is, I think most people would agree, it's a truly impressive achievement to get the US authorities, to get the European authorities, and to get the UK authorities on board with the Garda to target this criminal organisation. But the elephant in the room are the authorities in the United Arab Emirates. Are you going to get them on board? When and how?
In some ways, we can wrap those two questions together. If you look at today, and the legal instrument that has been introduced by OFAC, and the process of investigation, inquiry, the production of evidence not only by ourselves but by US law enforcement and the huge investigative effort that they've engaged in, the information supplied by our colleagues in the National Crime Agency, the information supplied by Europol, the huge weight of information and evidence that was provided that has arrived at this point where individuals and 3 entities have been sanctioned. And so our investigations carry on. We are building a case in terms of presenting a case then to the Director of Public Prosecutions. But I would say of today, what was implicit before and what some individuals could choose to ignore is absolutely explicit. If you deal with the individuals who are sanctioned as part of the Kinahan organised crime gang, you are dealing with criminals engaged in drug trafficking and indeed, as we've seen here very tragically in Ireland and also in Spain, murderous feuds who will resort to vicious actions and up to including murder. And I think in saying that this is now explicit, this is also explicit then to the authorities in the UAE as well.
Commissioner, just in terms of 2 questions from me, why now, why at this point did the United States authorities get involved at this juncture? What convinced them that this was a threat that they needed to step in with the level of effectively bounty and the level of sanctions that they have imposed? And secondly, what would your message be to people involved in the sporting world who are engaged still with some of the businesses associated with the Kinahan organised crime group?
Well, if I might turn to my colleague, just John O'Driscoll, who's done Trojan work and has personally engaged in this and driven this through to set out the process. But this has been a long and complicated process, and it has involved much work on our part and much work on the part of our investigative partners. Please, John.
Thank you, Commissioner. As the Commissioner said when he spoke earlier, on his arrival in the organisation as Commissioner and my first meeting with him, I spoke about this as a target, and therefore our engagement with the US goes back to that time. And indeed, shortly after the Commissioner took up office, he was travelling to Washington at a time that I was also there on business, and he took the opportunity at that time to speak to some of the people who we were dealing with. And he again, when he was in Washington more recently, and I was there on this business, met with the US authorities again. This is a venture that has been going on for some time. He politely didn't say when I first spoke to him that I told him this day would occur a lot sooner than today, but in fact it was because the collaboration developed and became more productive and has potential to lead to other successful outcomes that it has taken the length of time that is involved. And indeed, the fact that our engagement, particularly with OFAC, is ongoing for a long time is clear, because You are aware that that particular office has an involvement in sanctioning in another sphere, and it is the same office that is engaged in the sanctioning that we hear so much about in the news these days. And it is only because this initiative had advanced to such an extent in advance of that unfortunate situation in Ukraine that we were able to bring this to a conclusion, despite they being so busy in that particular aspect of their work.
So the second part of your question related then to the sporting world. Well, again, I would make the point that what was implicit is now absolutely explicit. And if you deal with these individuals who have been sanctioned, or these entities which are being sanctioned, you are involved in a criminal network. I would ask them to look to their own business, the probity of their own business, and then their relationship with their fans. And really, is this something that they want to be involved with in terms of their legitimate business? And I would think the answer to that is a resounding no.
And if I could just add to that, aside from the organised crime group destroying communities by peddling drugs, they are also attempting to destroy a sport that is so important to inner city communities. And the manner in which they have interfered in the sporting world has really provided even more incentive, if we didn't have enough, to bring about the downfall of this particular organised crime group.
Fairly similar to what Richard was asking. It's probably a question more directed at the Americans, because we have three companies named, but not maybe a company that is most associated with Daniel Kinahan in terms of reputation laundering. Just wondering why that might be the case, and what would you say to those very, very high-profile boxers in particular, but we know the Kinahan Group is also moving into football agents management. What would you say to those really high-profile sportsmen who continue to be associated with the Kinahan Group?
Well, in respect to the first part, I think that's illustrative of the rigour by which US federal law enforcement, and in particular the Office of OFAC, approach this matter. We have made the first phase of our announcement. Our investigations carry on. So this isn't in effect the final word that we would wish to see in respect of sanctions. We have more information and more evidence to glean, along with our partners, to see if we can extend the sanctions further. That would be part of our overall strategy in respect of this. And in respect then of individuals and very prominent sporting individuals who are obviously in some way connected with this group. And I would say you need to look to your sport, you need to look to your fans, and you need to think of your own reputation, because this is a very serious announcement made today after a huge amount of work. It will withstand scrutiny, and what we're saying is based very solidly on the evidence and information that very many law enforcement agencies you saw represented here today have gleaned and have provided, in effect, to an independent office for what is a presidential direction. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a question for Matt, please. You touched upon the worth of the Kinahan crime gang, and you mentioned the 8 attempts on life thwarted in the UK. When it comes to threatening law and order, how dominant, how responsible for flooding UK streets with drugs are the Kinahans?
So I think you've heard today from many of the partners here that this group is a transnational organised crime group, and that's exactly how we assess them. So we assess that they've got a significant role in orchestrating and organising major drug shipments, firearm shipments that impact in the UK, on the streets of the UK, in Ireland, Europe and elsewhere and beyond. So we do assess this group to be a high threat, high harm organised crime gang, and that's why we've targeted, from an NCA point of view, the UK subsidiaries, if you like, in terms of the operation against Kavanagh and his associates and the operation against Mulvey. And that's why we've worked so closely with Garda Síochána and the US authorities and European partners to share intelligence, to share evidence, because of the threat that's posed, level of violence, the use of lethal firearms, and of course the high-level orchestration of international drugs trafficking, which we're all committed to combating. They are a highly significant organisation impacting on the UK. There are others, but it's a measure of how seriously we take this group, the commitment that's been put to this operation, the partnership you've seen with Garda Síochána, with the other agencies represented. It shows the level of threat and the high orchestration and organisation of drugs trafficking that this group represents to the UK.
Good morning. Firstly, just I suppose to Assistant Commissioner O'Driscoll, you might be best to answer this. So what are the next phases now of this investigation in terms of bringing the Kinahan Organised Crime Group and its leaders back to justice? Are you putting pressure on the UAE? Is the US putting pressure on the UAE? And to Mr. Horn as well, are you and your group looking now to speak to some of the big boxing promoters who have openly said they have worked with Daniel Kinahan because that is who a boxer sends to represent them? Are you now looking to speak to those individuals in search of information from them after this latest development?
First of all, in terms of the next steps, I outlined today, for example, how one investigation that has been ongoing for some time has resulted in the issuing of a European arrest warrant. And there are other investigations which we are progressing, bearing in mind that I have said clearly all along that our targeting is mainly on the apex of this organised crime group. Those investigations progress. We continue to gather evidence and will continue to engage with the Director of Public Prosecutions who will adjudicate whether there is enough evidence to prefer charges as time progresses. You have heard the input from the other agencies that are participating, who continue also to progress their operational activity, including OFAC, who, while sanctioning particular people and entities today, may well sanction other entities into the future and other people into the future as this endeavour continues. And we continue to engage also with the National Crime Agency in the UK to progress other aspects of this particular initiative. So a lot of investigations taking place, all of which are progressing, some progressing particularly well, and we expect further developments into the future in that regard.
Okay, thanks very much. There are a number of questions online, but I think the content of them have been... Sorry.
Addressed to myself, I think, wasn't there? So I think you're asking about boxing. I mean, I'm going to reiterate the points that have been made by the Commissioner, that it is absolutely a matter for sport and the leaders of sport and the participants in that to take a look at who they're doing business with and whether they're comfortable with that and to take the right steps. That's an appropriate matter for the sporting community to address. In terms of further information and what we'll do next, you've heard there are ongoing investigations, there is ongoing intelligence cooperation, a significant announcement has been made around a reward and a request and appeal for information, and we want people to come forward, and a link has been, I think, broadcast as part of this for where people should bring their information to. And absolutely, all of us will work together on any leads, intelligence, evidence that we can glean to continue to target this group.
Okay, thank you very much. There have been a number of online questions, but I think either the question or the content has already been answered in some of the answers that we've already given. So, RTE for one final question, please.
Yeah, as a broadcaster, I just wanted to ask you, how does today's announcement affect on broadcasters, particularly sports broadcasters who may be prepared to broadcast boxing matches in which the Kinahans are involved in? And the second question is in relation to the Byrne Organised Crime Group, which is a franchise of the Kinahan Organised Crime Group. As you know, Liam Byrne has gone to Birmingham and he's based his operations there after the Criminal Assets Bureau seized his assets. Because it's a franchise of the Kinahan Organised Crime Group, is it included in today's sanctions? Because the Kinahan Group has been sanctioned. So is the Byrne Organised Crime Group included? Is Liam Byrne included?
In respect of the sanctions today, they are directed towards those individuals. They're specific to those individuals, and then to the entities. But obviously, all of us, and the NCA included, we are very concerned about organised crime throughout these islands, and we are very aware of the various connections between organised crime groups. You describe them as franchise, and that is probably an accurate description of the relationship that is there between the Kinahan Organised Crime Group and then other smaller factions. So they are part of our investigative effort. AC O'Driscoll earlier set out a huge amount of investigative effort that has been carried out here in Ireland in terms of bringing individuals to justice. The same with the National Crime Agency, and then also the regional crime squads that are based in the United Kingdom as well. And also then we have the involvement in Europol. And I have to point out that some of the countries that aren't represented here still remain very active: the Dutch, the Spanish, the Australians, and also then our colleagues in the Police Service of Northern Ireland. So there is a huge effort beyond even what we've seen and been talking about directly here today. And your first question in respect of broadcasters, I think just my overall comment in respect of just the business of sport. Today we've made it very clear through this announcement who and what exactly the Kinahan Organised Crime Group is. Individuals, specific individuals, have been sanctioned, and it's then for business to make a decision considering the probity of their own business, the probity then of all the business that comes from sport, and also then their fans, and even just then the reputation of a sport, whether they should carry on in any business dealings with any of these sanctioned individuals. And then in fact then, in the US, that is in fact prohibited.
Two-parter, Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner. What would you say directly to people here, Commissioner, about the $5 million reward that's available? What would your appeal to be to people here? And then, Assistant Commissioner, do you have any concerns? There's almost 80 members, associates of the cartel in prison. Have you got concerns in the coming years a large number of those will be released and the potential to rejuvenate the cartel here?
Well, firstly, in respect of the appeal, and it's a very significant appeal in terms just of the money that's been offered, but also the nature of the appeal, because it is in respect of information around individuals who have been yet brought to justice. So we are obviously very open to receiving information, as are the US authorities. And when we receive that information, or it's received by US law enforcement, then we will act on that appropriately. The people here in Ireland, we obviously will support anyone who comes forward and provides information to us, and then it's for the US authorities to decide whether they're within the reward programme or not.
Our investigations are ongoing. This is not fire brigade policing. This is a plan to ensure that we bring down this organised crime group. So even when crime is not being committed at any particular time, we still have our focus on everyone that is in that crime group. So many people are in prison, have received lengthy sentences in some respects, and they may well want to reflect on that and see the price that they have paid for being associated with this particular organised crime group. And also, what is happening here today may lead others to a belief that they will be better off cutting their links with this particular crime group, and indeed to cutting their links with criminal activity. The Office of Foreign Asset Control, in sanctioning people today, finished their document by saying, as they do each time they sanction, if behaviour changes and people adopt a different course, the sanctions will be lifted. And it's an opportunity for people engaged in crime to realise it won't pay, and perhaps we better take a different course.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That's this morning's press conference finished. Gormagot agus Longafol.
Just thank you to those who provided the venue to us. A wonderful venue, and thank you for the facility.